education institution. We allowed that. But there are laws with conditionalities. So it's against that background that then I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And starting actually with the legal obligations. As it relates to the legal obligation of my department, the Higher Education Act 101 of 1997, as amended, empowers my department to, amongst other things, do the following. By the way, I mustn't say this. I'm not just reading this. I was part of the drafting of this legislation because I was chairing the portfolio committee at that time when this legislation was passed. That amongst others, it empowers my departments to provide for different categories of registration of private higher education institutions and the associated rights to extend the power to award diplomas, certificates, and confer degrees to private higher education institutions. And also to provide for the withdrawal and revocation of qualifications by public or private higher education institutions. In line with the objects of the Higher Education Act, then, in 2016, I repealed the 2013 regulations for the registration of private higher education institutions and published new ones. The new regulations outline the application process, requirements for registration, responsibility of an institution, and the appeals procedures that must be followed by individuals or entities that wish to register a private higher education institution. I was the minister as well, by the way, at that time, when I repealed the old ones and passed the new ones. Now, further to this, the Higher Education Quality Committee, the HEQC, of the Council on Higher Education is responsible for the accreditation of all higher education programs in the country. The CHE may provide further details, the CEO who is here, in case you want more details on that. But let me then come, against this background, let me then come straight to the cancellation, the issue of the cancellation of the registration of the educo institutions. In line with these legal prescripts, on 26 July 2023, the Director General of the Department of Higher Education and Training, in his capacity as the Registrar of Private Higher Education Institutions, cancelled the registration of the following educo institutions. It's City Varsity, it's Damelin, it's ISESA City Campus, and Lyceum College. Those four. These cancellations were carried out in accordance with the 2016 regulations of the registration of private higher education institutions and the applicable sections of the Higher Education Act. More specifically, these four institutions failed to comply with the following requirements of the Act and the regulations. Firstly, they failed to fulfill the requirements for registration as contemplated in Section 57(2)(b) of the Act. And secondly, they failed to discharge their responsibilities as required by Chapter 6 of the regulations. You can go and check this. In particular, the educo institutions have failed to submit their annual financial statements and the tax clearance certificates for the 2021 and 2022 years as proof of their financial viability. As government, we have to make sure that these institutions are financially viable. It's part of the requirements that they've got to meet. We are now moving into the 2023 cycle. The four educo institutions were required to lodge an appeal with the minister on or before the 26th of September last year, 2023. They then requested an extension to 28 February 2024 and are now seeking a further extension. So they think that I must be amongst the kindest of ministers to just granting extension after extension when they know that they are supposed to comply in terms of the law. In addition to failing to submit evidence of their financial viability to the department, the 4 EduCorp brands can be deemed as dysfunctional, and this is mainly measured against the daily complaints and grievances received from students, most of which remain unresolved. If I'm not mistaken, but if I'm wrong, you will correct me. One of the complaints that I remember receiving was that students were given marks based on exam scripts that were never marked, because the lecturers were no longer at work because they were not being paid. Now, that's the worst sin that can be committed by an education institution, whether public or private. You just cannot lie and give students marks based on scripts that were never marked, or as if there was an exam that was written for that matter. In addition to this, the following serious issues were brought to my attention as minister. The Higher Education Quality Committee has withdrawn the accreditation of some programs for City Varsity, Damelin, and Lyceum College. Now, another matter is misrepresentation on student numbers. EduCorp claims to have 50,000 learners in the system. That's what they claim. This information is incorrect, since the 2022 annual reports indicate the breakdown of student enrollment as follows. City Varsity had 540 students, 2022 annual report. Damelin had 4,012 students. Isesa City Campus had 145 students, and Lyceum College had 8,399. In total, this was 13,096, not the 50,000 they were claiming. As the media may want to follow, by the way, why are they claiming higher numbers which they do not have? Are they trying to project a sense that they are still having lots of students and trying to hide the fact that their student numbers have been rapidly declining? Now, here then are also the complaints received from students, and I want to outline these so that the media is clear about what we are dealing with. For some time, our directorate that deals with private higher education institutions has been receiving many complaints from students against the EduCorp institutions, most of which remain unresolved. And these complaints relate to the following. Bear with me, I want to mention all of them. Poor quality of teaching and learning, lack of proper administrative support, poorly qualified staff, corruption and bribery, lack of response for requests for refunds, lack of professionalism, exploitation of poor students, non-payment of staff salaries, and underpayment of staff salaries. Now, here are also complaints received from students on the Intake College, the Damelin Correspondence College, and also complaints arising from CETA-supported and CETA-accredited programs, because these institutions also have got programs that they are offering that are accredited by the CETAs. These complaints extend to the other brands, such as Intake College Limited and Damelin Correspondence College, which fall under the jurisdiction of the Quality Councils of Trades and Occupations, the QCTO. The QCTO has not been able to restore stability within these two institutions, and students continue to be exploited. These complaints also extend to the offering of the CETA-accredited programs. The CETAs have not been able to restore stability within the EduCorp institutions, and students continue to be exploited in so many ways, being offered programs that are not up to standard, and so on. Also, let me just highlight complaints received from students on Central Technical College. These complaints extend to their registration as private colleges. Our Directorate, Registration of Private Colleges in the department, has already issued these institutions with a notice of intent to cancel their registration. In November 2023, the department's examination section suspended the exam center registration for the site in Pretoria approved to Central Technical Colleges since staff members did not turn up for invigilation and many students have been left stranded. It just never rains, but it pours with these institutions. Now, there's also a matter of sudden closure of sites that have left students stranded. The sites of some institutions closed suddenly for reasons of failure to pay the rent, staff salaries, and or to pay for municipal services. These are the following institutions. City Varsity at Braamfontein in Johannesburg closed because staff withdrew their services for non-payment of salaries and students were left stranded. Damelin, the sites at Braamfontein, Port Elizabeth, Cape Town, East London closed suddenly since they were in arrears with the municipal rates and rental, and students were left stranded. Lyceum College, the only site was closed due to an eviction order by the landlord for failure to pay the rent, and students were left stranded. There are also allegations of corruption. On the 8th of January this year, 2024, our directorate, responsible for registration of private colleges, wrote to these 4 educo institutions and requested them to respond to a list of allegations of corruption against them. To date, they have not responded. It's March now. Towards the end of March, they have not responded. Now, concerns regarding students and the way forward. All stakeholders associated with these institutions are expressing some sort of concern for students. By the way, we are also as equally concerned as the department about the fate of students, whether in public or private institutions, including in these institutions. In this regard, the following must be noted. EDUCO will be given a phase-out period in which to phase out students already in the pipeline. EDUCO would have to reimburse students where it is due. The latest numbers of enrolled students as per the 2022 annual report is 13,096, not 50,000, as EDUCO claims. One challenge for students is the transfer of credit, considering the recognition of prior learning and credit accumulation transfer policy. Another challenge could be students repeating some modules or paying extra fees. Now, let me come then to the conditions attached to the cancellation of registration, so that we don't get presented as government as this devil with 2 horns and a tail. And I wish to conclude by outlining the conditions and obligations that the decision to cancel their registration imposes on these 4 educational institutions. The cancellation of the registration of City Varsity will take immediate effect. As of the date of this letter, City Varsity must not enroll new students on any year of the program. City Varsity must phase out pipeline students by the 31st of December last year. That's what we told them already. City Varsity Limited must submit a teach-out plan which includes items to both the items outlined below to both the department and the CHE within 2 weeks of the date of this letter. The teach-out plan must also include the number of learners in the pipeline and when learner records will be uploaded onto the National Learner Records database, which we have. The teach-out plan must indicate that returning students who did not complete the program within the stipulated time will not be admitted post 31st December 2023, and that they would need to complete their program at another institution. Student must be informed accordingly. Now let me explain this. In terms of the law and the conditions of registration, we don't want to leave students stranded. It is incumbent upon EDUCO and its institutions to find alternative institutions for the students to complete their studies, either public or private. And by the way, we are a very generous department. We are also willing to assist on that score in the identification of relevant institutions where students can be able to complete. Now, any institution that has been notified by the registrar that its provisional registration has lapsed or that its provisional registration has been cancelled in terms of the relevant regulations must inform its students within 14 days from the date of the registrar's notice that its registration has lapsed or been cancelled, and notify the students of the arrangements that will be made to safeguard their interests in terms of this regulation. B. Issue to each enrolled student a copy of his or her academic transcript as contemplated in Regulation 25. C. Reimburse or compensate any enrolled students who has a lawful claim on the institution as a consequence of its ceasing to operate from funds established as contemplated in Regulation 12.2. Make adequate arrangements for affected students, that's the point I was talking to complete their programs at a comparable public or private institution. And that's why we said we are willing to assist in the identification of such, as they did. Not to do it for them, but I help in the identifying of this, because as government we have an interest in the students, both in the public and the private sectors. Also, this institution must cease operating before or at the end of the academic year, and any institutions that fails to comply is guilty of an offense. Also, these institutions must ensure that no new students are enrolled after the date specified by the registrar. In conclusion, and even much more serious, there is not much information available about the current leadership structure at EDUCO. And there is no credible evidence to suggest that the management of EDUCO is working to improve or correct some of the serious governance and compliance failures that I have referred to. What we are seeing instead are students and staff being left stranded, and we wish to urge the affected staff, by the way, to seek the assistance of the Labour Court and or the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, the CCMA, because this becomes now a labour matter when it comes to staff. Under these circumstances and with the information at our disposal, it would be unconscionable to maintain the registration status of these 4 private institutions and allow ourselves to become complicit in gross governance and compliance failures. We also wish to warn these institutions, these EDUCO institutions, that they must not then start embarking on a futile public relations exercise and also seek to opportunistically respond through a public relations exercise to what we are saying. The only way they can respond to what we are saying is to meet the requirements as per the law. And it's on that basis that, by the way, we want to operate. But we are duty bound, since now we are where we are, to explain to the country the mess that is actually in these institutions. Theirs is to address this, and I've been very generous because the registrar and others as a department have been extending and extending, wanting to appeal and so on. Of course, we can't extend forever. But because we are concerned about the education of the students and the situation of the staff, we have given them ample opportunity to address this. Most concerning, and by doing so we would be failing as the department in our obligation to protect the rights and dignity of students who simply wanted to acquire an academic qualification with the view to improve their lives and that of their families. In other words, on our part, today I have accounted on what we are supposed to do and what we have done. These institutions in themselves owe the country the truth on the state of their situation. This is the information that we have, which is reliable in terms of our own criteria. So with this then, I wish to thank you very much, and thanks for coming to this briefing so that I don't have to be doing 15, 16 interviews per day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. And as per usual, we are not going to waste any time, right? So Minister, Dr. Green, Dr. Shaida and Dr. Sokwikwa, we are now going to allow the members of the media to interact with the Minister's presentation by way of questions. And as per usual, colleagues, we would appreciate it before you ask your question, please just identify which media house you represent. The opportunity is now open for you to ask your questions. Yes, Ndati.
Minister, you mentioned that they asked for an extension last year, and then you didn't give us how long did you give them, and now they are asking for another extension. I was wondering if you can tell us how long are they asking for this period? For this time around, how long are they willing to respond to you?
Okay, we got that question. Is there any other question? I see there's a hand there at the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Nzimande from RFM. Just a couple of clarity-seeking questions, Minister. Just in terms of the financial statements, you make reference to the years 2021 and 2022. However, the notice in the Gazette speaks of the year 2020. So if you could perhaps just clarify in that particular instance. Also, the issue that this issue was essentially finalized last year with the decision to cancel the registration by the Director General. Would it not have been at that particular point in time pertinent for you as the department to alert prospective students that this is the crisis that we're faced with in terms of these institutions, and perhaps even advise them not to register with those particular institutions? Because of course many of them now find themselves in a situation where they are enrolled as first-time students, they've paid a substantial amount of money, and they're in absolute limbo. So just in terms of that particular question for now, thank you very much.
Okay, can we take another one? Okay, Yebosis.
There's a question from colleagues attending the media briefing online.
Okay.
There's a question from Shonisani Shikalange from Times Live. On the decision to deregister the institutions, did the department see this coming? And before the decision was there anything else done except asking the institution to respond to the allegations? Do we also know how many staff members will be affected by this?
Okay. I suggest we deal with those ones. And
It looks like they are for the relevant bodies, these questions.
yeah.
Ministers don't answer to this.
Yeah, on the technicalities.
Yeah. So I would suggest we deal with those ones, and
Yeah.
if there are any others, so I would suggest that we use this podium to respond to the questions.
Yes, to go
Yes,
to
please,
the
yeah.
podium.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Okay, great. So thank you, Minister, for the earlier presentation. Appreciated. These are really difficult and challenging times, and we take these issues very seriously. It's very sensitive. And then thank you also, Veli, Dr. Sokikwa, my DDG, and Dr. Green from the CHE. On the issue of the Gazette, which says 2020, I think you are looking at an older Gazette. The current Gazette cancelling makes specific reference to the years 21 and 22. Now, I want to, so that's the first issue. The second issue, the delay between the registrar's decision to cancel in 26 July 23 and the gazetting of that decision in March 24 is due to the fact that Educo came back to say there's a mistake made by the registrar when he took a decision to cancel. So we had to step back and wait for them to submit evidence to say, yes, there is a mistake, and they couldn't submit that evidence, and by law we then had to proceed and publish the notice to cancel in the Gazette. Now, okay, so what were the other questions?
The reason for the extension.
Okay, now look, I want to emphasize here the reason for the extension. We work as a team here between the Office of the Minister, the DG, the CHE, etc. And our first duty is to build systems, organizations, etc. And so when institutions come to us to say, look, there is a problem here, etc., we try to assist them to rectify and rehabilitate. So after the registration is cancelled, an institution does have the right to lodge an appeal with the minister. If they feel they need additional time, they can request that from the minister, and that's provided for in the Higher Education Act. So it's the minister's prerogative to say, yes, I will give you an extension, and he did approve the first request. They are now seeking another extension, and that request is currently under consideration. So they are requesting for another extension to October 2024. Okay.
To October 24.
October.
The other question was, did we alert the students last year about the state of things, that also they should be careful not to go and register?
So yes, before we issue the cancellation, we issue a notice of intent to cancel, which is also published in the Government Gazette. So everyone is aware. And maybe that's not sufficient, but students have been warned and alerted, especially when they come to us with complaints, etc., that these are the issues, and we would like you to consider enrolling at the institution before you do.
Did we see it coming? Who's going to answer that?
Yes.
Did we see this coming? That was another question.
Yes, actually, there's a lot of history here. These institutions have been in the system for many years, and from 2012, under the new ownership, we have been working very closely with them to ensure that we give them the time, the opportunity, the space to rectify and rehabilitate. So I think it would be fair to say that yes, we did see it coming, but we also thought that they would have the integrity and the decency enough to restore all that was going wrong. Thank you. Did I answer?
Can I just say something? If you don't have,
Okay, Minister?
yeah, no. Okay. Thanks, Shahida. I just want to make one important point. Each beginning of the year we have a campaign. By the way, we always invite the media on that campaign to identify bogus colleges and other bogus post-school education and training institutions. We always invite the media in order to make sure that the media is able to join us and hopefully inform the country about what we are finding and what we are doing about that. And we've been working very well, by the way, with SABC, the police, when it comes to this campaign. But over and above that, all the time we communicate that before you register in any college or institution, you must go to our website and check if that institution is properly registered. That is why also you can actually begin to pick up the information. We have an ongoing campaign around that matter. Again, would request the media to join us in this, because you have a reach that sometimes we may not have, to be able to assist us to actually reach out to the community and to our country, so that no one gets caught unawares when there are problems like this. I mean, as Shahida is saying, we also publish this in the Government Gazette. And also those government gazettes are contained are there in our website, which points to problems that we have, notices that we are giving to institutions and so on, so that parents and students are able to take the necessary steps to make sure that they are not being led up the garden path. Thank you.
Thank you for those responses, Minister and Dr. Shaida. Are there any other questions, colleagues from the media? Sorry?
Just one more.
Okay, we can note you. I just want to check if there are others in this round of questions. Yes, I see there's you. Is there any other hand? I've seen 2 hands so far. Okay, there's another hand there. So we will start here and then we will come to you so that we just make sure we have a fair spread of everybody getting an opportunity. You may start and then you will follow and then you will conclude in this round.
Good morning, Patricia Fasahi from the SABC.
Okay.
Do we know how many students exactly will be affected by this? And then another question, with the shortage of higher learning institutions in the country and the high demand that we see taken, of course, the high volumes of matriculants that are produced annually, would not have been much better to, fix the challenges in these institutions than deregistering them, knowing that there's actually a huge demand and a lot of students would benefit from, attending at these institutions?
Okay, we got that. Let's just take a few and then, yes sir, you may follow. Just use the one next to you. Don't worry, Craig. Technology sometimes does this to all of us. Okay. Let's see if you can project and we can capture that. Let's try.
Yeah, it's Craig Govender from News 24. I see that EDICO has asked for an extension until October. Is this being considered by the department? And is there any chance at all that they could still be allowed to operate after consideration of the extension? Or is this final in the sense that the cancellation of the registrations are done, and under no circumstances will they be allowed to operate again?
Okay, thanks for that question. And then, my brother at the back there.
Thank you once again. I think my colleagues have in fact covered my questions, but the question of capacity as an extension, because you've admitted that both public and private, it's essentially for the department to care for students in both spheres. So you say that your help will just go as far as identifying, but we know that institutions, particularly public institutions, they receive tons and tons of applications, and because of space, they're just not able to cater. So what we're likely then to see in this particular instance is that we're going to have a lot of students that just don't have an alternative, at least for this year. And you raise concerns, but how is there any way to address that particular aspect of this issue? And then just as a final one, going back to the issue of communication, and I accept that you said that it wasn't sufficient because yes, we can't expect everyone to continuously check in terms of the government gazette, particularly prospective students. But when you then made this particular decision, did you perhaps not deem it fit to issue a media statement like you do with the operation that the minister is speaking about, to say we've now identified that these are bogus colleges and we're urging students to stay away from them? So beyond just the publishing of the notice and the intention, And in no way am I saying this must be misconstrued as me saying you should shoulder the blame in terms of the communication, but just a statement that would have then carried that particular message. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Datemlo, are you raising your hand for the last in this round? Okay. Let's take you and then we will take the responses.
Minister, in your statement you mentioned lack of leadership in these institutions. And Business Day also mentioned that they contacted one of the people they thought is the CEO of Tamelin, but then he told them that he had resigned. I think it's Lee or something. So I'm just wondering, who have you been speaking to, who has been asking for this extension? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Minister and team, you will guide us on.
No, let the
how
team start and answer as much of these questions as possible.
Okay, great.
I'll see whether there's a need to come in at the end.
So, thank you again. Now, thank you for your very important questions. So I'm going to start with the first question. How many students are affected? Plus minus 13,000. We are fully aware, right? Now, your question is, shouldn't we just try to fix the problem because of issues of capacity and there are so many students, etc. We have been working with these institutions for almost 12 years, from 2012, to get them to rehabilitate themselves. Now, if something is dysfunctional and it is not working out, it is unconscionable for the department to keep it registered, only for them to exploit students even more. And we can't allow them to use students as human shields, right? We work with students and parents on a daily basis. They call us, they speak to us, and I will ask them, Mommy, how much did you pay? She'll tell me, I paid 60,000 cash. Where did you get the money? I ask, where did you get the money from? My savings, I borrowed from this uncle, that aunt, etc., etc. So this is a human rights issue for us. It's very, very serious. And we take it very seriously because we work with students and parents on the ground. And we've been doing it for the past 12 years with these particular institutions. So no. So this is my response to your question. If it's not clear enough, you can always come back to me. And then, regarding those students who are in the system, we consider them as pipeline students. And we will give EduCorps up to the end of this year and even up to the end of 25 in which to phase out these pipeline students, but they cannot enroll new students. So students are taken care of. Now, having said that, we are encouraging students to transfer to other institutions if they can do so. Now, the issue of communication and the media statement, I think we would need to look at that, Veli, in the future when we cancel. Alongside the Gazette, how do we communicate this information to the media and to all stakeholders? So, okay, so that's my response to these questions. I hope I've covered all.
Who's the CEO, the person who said this?
Okay, so that's another great question, because for us, you see, in government, it's a bureaucracy and it's administration, and we need to have the structures very clear. And we need to know who's responsible for what, who is the accounting authority. And when it comes to the EduCorps institutions, many times we struggle. So yes, we are told that Leo Chetty and Louise Naya are the two people who call the shots. But the person who communicates with us directly currently is a Mr. Dasi Mudli. And then regarding the complaints, we communicate directly with Ms. Meena Kanthan and Ms. Hanneli van Rensburg. But that's on the complaints issues, and there's Anne Waits, who's some senior manager at EduCorps who handles the academic part. Okay, thanks.
But Dr. Green would like to add something.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Shahida, and thank you, Minister, for the opportunity to join. I think this is a really important press briefing. And just to support the DHET's communication on the issue of the EduCore institutions, with complementary information from the Council on Higher Education, which also has engaged these institutions over some time, quite a few years. A range of complaints have also received by the CHE on these institutions and their practices. And the list that the Minister read out is very similar to the list that the CHE has been receiving. The Higher Education Quality Committee of the CHE is mandated by the Higher Education Act of 1997, as the Minister has indicated, to be the quality assurance agency for higher education in the country. And it's in that ambit that the CHE engages the institutions. In 2019, the CHE undertook a re-accreditation exercise of some of the EduCore institutions. And as a result of that exercise, at the end of 2019, 10 Damelin qualifications and 9 Lyceum qualifications accreditation was withdrawn. And the withdrawal was on the basis of serious quality concerns, which apparently have not been addressed since that time. In the last meeting of the HEQC in February, the HEQC discussed this issue in detail. It noted the action that's been taken by the Minister and the Department of Higher Education and Training, and it had decided at that 8th of February meeting to track the space and then to discuss this issue in its upcoming April meeting again. The CHE will execute its mandate in terms of quality assurance in relation to accreditation and institutional audits, and it is likely that the HEQC will make a decision on further actions, because these are not just administrative issues. They are serious quality issues in relation to the delivery of higher education programs. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you for those responses, Minister and team. We will now have the last round, just before we close, the last round of questions, and then after which we will then close this media briefing. Can we now get colleagues? Sise, is your hand up? Okay. Tatemlo, you're pointing at somebody's hand, or is it the solidarity hand? Okay, yeah, you're pledging solidarity. Okay, the gentleman that you are. Are there any other hands? Just need to make sure, right? All right, we'll have those two. Thereafter, we'll take the responses and conclude the media briefing. You may start, sister.
It's Patricia again from the SABC. Obviously, we heard that the challenges or the plans to rehabilitate these institutions go as far back as 2012. But in your engagements, in obviously trying to guide them and find solutions, did they by any chance mention financial constraints? And how did the COVID-19 pandemic perhaps impact on them? Did it make matters worse in any way if there were financial challenges related to some of the challenges that they faced?
Okay, we got that question. Okay, let's get you, Tatemlo.
Okay. First question is from Shoni. She's saying she was not answered about how many staff members are affected.
Staff members?
Yeah. And then the question that I have is that you mentioned that some of the learners wrote exams and you find that they were not marked. So what happens to a learner who managed to graduate in that era, in that period, whereby you find that a learner didn't even write the exam? How will it impact the society, and what damage does it have? And then lastly, you mentioned that you have been keeping contact. So I'm just wondering if you raise these allegations of corruption, misrepresentation of numbers, allegations of corruption also. Did you send them to say, we have received this information about you, can you respond, and what was their response?
Okay. So in responding, it's important to remember that in the minister's address, the minister did indicate that there's a concern for the plight of staff as well, and even offered advice So if we have that figure, because the question speaks to how many staff members are affected, the colleagues will then advise if we have it. But the point was made about the advice that is being given to staff, because the statement did express that concept, but we will hear in the responses when we get there. So can we give, okay,
Yes, a question just came through
okay,
from Okushe Shati,
Okay.
representing Cape Times.
all right.
I'm not sure if I missed this. The minister mentioned the number of students who will be affected. How many campuses across the country will be affected, and do we know if there are also international campuses affected? The second question from Okushe is, the minister spoke about reimbursement. It seems some of the institutions were in debt and couldn't pay rent. What happens if they don't reimburse the students? Third question is, third year students are asking about graduation. Will they be affected?
There is a hand right at the back there.
Okay.
Naomi here with YFM. I kind of just wanted to
From which media house?
From YFM.
YFM. Please just get something to.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. Try to project as much as you can.
Okay. I suppose I just wanted more clarity or a concrete answer as to, will the institution be able to remedy itself, or the institutions be able to remedy themselves? Will they be able to remedy themselves, or is it set in stone that they will not be operational after the October 2024 date?
So this is almost a similar question to the one that was asked by Craig.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's there's a sense in which it's
Yeah. I don't think we answered it.
yes, yeah. But I'm just saying it's a similar question. Yeah, it is. But at least it's in essence it's a similar question. Yes. So we may respond, Minister and Tim.
I always come for the easier questions.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm not very well, but I thought this issue was so important to the department. I had to support our minister. Let me just indicate up front that legal processes, if an applicant has asked for an appeal, we have to follow the logic of an appeal. In short, you can't declare an institution a bogus institution until the appeals process has been concluded. I think that's an important note, because I think we all missed this point. Further, can the institution remedy itself? We'll only have to have a final view of this once they have presented their case. But unfortunately, they have asked for repeated extensions. First, it was September last year, then February, and now it's October. But we have to hear the appeals before we can make conclusions. Thank you, Minister. I thought that point was important.
So the first question on COVID-19 and its impact on the business. COVID-19 affected all businesses, including the private higher institutions and the educo ones. Now, from the 127 private higher institutions we had at the time, not one institution closed down because of COVID. And where one or two came back to us to say we need additional time in which to submit the financials, there's a slight problem, we did give them the time and they are now compliant. Okay, so that's my response to the question on the impact of COVID. Then on staff numbers, we don't know the full count yet. And even there, I want to just add something. Many of the staff teaching are not even full-time. They are part-time, on contract, consultants, etc., etc. Okay? So on those numbers, I can't tell you with any degree of certainty what's going on there. For the learners who didn't write the exam and where there were irregularities in the writing of the exams and the final certificate received, we would have to look at the merits of each case together with the CHE, okay, and see whether the procedures and processes were adhered to and whether the final document is valid. And that it's important because we need to safeguard the quality and the credentials and the quality of the qualification itself. We can't allow a situation where our qualifications are undervalued. Okay? Then, on the allegations of corruption, I want to say this. For many years, at least for the past 3 years, we have been receiving allegations of corruption against EduCorp from external stakeholders. Some were anonymous, some were non-anonymous. And when they write to us, they copy everyone in, including the media houses. So all of these allegations of corruption are out in the public domain. We did write to EduCorp, specifically Louise Naya and Leo Chetty, because the allegations were leveled against them, to say, these are the allegations, you are aware of it, because you are copied in on the email, can you respond? And they haven't done so yet. Okay, so how many campuses? I can't recall offhand, but it might be plus minus 10 campuses in the country. We don't know of them to have campuses abroad, internationally. And if they do, it's the responsibility of the regulatory authorities in those countries to handle whatever the issues are within their legislation. Now on the issue of reimbursement, when a student registers at a private institution, he or she enters into a contractual agreement. And we don't have the legal authority to intervene on a dispute on a contractual agreement, except to advise the student to get legal advice, okay, to seek the assistance of an attorney, SABC, etc. Because there are conditions attached to the contract, and it is also bound by the regulatory requirement for a reimbursement. So a lawyer would have to look at what the issues are and the way forward. On the third-year student graduation, the graduation, so I think it's important that we understand this. Whilst the registration is cancelled, they are allowed to operate as in a phase-out period. So these institutions are operating in a phase-out period, and they are required to have a graduation for their students, to release the results, to release the certificates, etc. So the registration is cancelled pending the outcome on an appeal, and they are currently operating in a phase-out period. Thank you.
Can I just say, I suppose let's close it, unless anybody else wants to say something. Yeah, thanks, Shalida. Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe in conclusion, I just need to emphasize, or maybe to add something in relation to Preg's question. We can't tell upfront that if an appeal will be successful or not. It all depends on whether the institution meets the requirements that we have set in terms of the law and in terms of the policies. Simply what this means, if an appeal is made in order for an institution to be able to provide something on finances or on governance or on curricula, whatever the case may be, if they do meet those, indeed they would be allowed to continue. It's a given. But if they don't, then we won't allow them to actually practice. Also, by the way, what we must bear in mind here is a bigger picture. It's the credibility of qualifications in South Africa. Because if we allow one institution to get away with qualifications that are not up to standard, that's the image of the country as a whole. I think we must just bear that in mind, that we can't afford to do that. That is why, by the way, I know that Marcia, I don't think we've written the letter to Dr. Green as yet. I really want us, CHE, to help advise us. What do we do with these people who claim qualifications that they do not have? It must not just be enough to name and shame. It's a criminal offense. It's fraud, actually. I think that we need to write the CHE to do that, because I'm getting lots of complaints Nzimande, people claim they've got PhDs. Someone says, I've got a degree, and is found that doesn't have a degree. How do we ensure? Some of them even claim overseas institutions. Because that also is just another example of things that rubbishes our post-school education and training system. If there is one of the most important things we must guard against, is the credibility of our qualifications. Because that has got huge implications. Not just for South Africans who want to go outside the country and present their qualifications, but it's the image of our post-school education and training system. So if you meet the requirements, you are fine. If you don't, you don't. We can't tell beforehand. But as I've said, we have tried our best to give some of them 2 chances, 3 chances. You know, now they say October 2024. The problem is that if you keep on appealing, but we are not meeting the requirements, for over a period of a year or 1.5 years, there are students who are studying. What will in the end be the credibility of those qualifications? So I just thought that I need to emphasize. Let me end by saying this, maybe where I started. I'm really and truly saddened by what has happened to Educo. I am, I must say. I know of so many people. Damelin goes back to what, 1947? 1947? Long before I was born. And people have qualifications from there, has been filling in a gap, even during the era of apartheid. And for these institutions to be in this state now, it's very saddening for me as a minister. I hope that maybe some people may come in and rescue these institutions and their name and image, hopefully. On our side, we will do all we can as government within the framework of the law and our policies to assist, as it has been outlined now by all the officials in front here in terms of what is it that we have done in order to try and assist these institutions, including the past 12 years. By the way, Patricia, when I always see you, I must tell people today, Patricia is the lady who interviewed me one day. I think it was 4:45 in the morning when I was Minister of Transport. And I looked at her, I ended up saying, we've got this new machine which is testing the amount of blood in your alcohol. Blame Patricia, please, for this. Don't blame me. Thank you very much.
Easter.
It was Easter weekend, yes. Yeah, we are close.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you, Dr. Sokwikwa. Thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you, Dr. Shaida. And most importantly, thank you to you, colleagues from the media, without whom this media briefing, would not have been what it is today. So we appreciate your continued support, and we would obviously continue to engage. And we take even some of your questions because some of them help sharpen our policies and especially how we communicate. So we don't take your input for granted. Thank you so much, colleagues, and everybody who has assisted. That concludes this media briefing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for responding quickly also. We only organized this yesterday.
This as a basis.
Now we have, that's right.
There's some message that Educo circulating internally. Now forget is that what's happening today, you can show it to you.
What did they say? You say it's not true.
What are the chances of you sharing footage with me? With who? What are the chances of you sharing?